Welcome to the KO Boxing Show. Haven't we got a big show tonight? The undisputed middleweight champion of the world, Kelly the Ghost Pavlik. Welcome to the KO Boxing Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Excited.
No, great to have you on. Mate, what a terrific record you had. 40 wins, 34 knockouts. It must have been a great journey for you. And let's go back to probably the significant fights. In July 2006, you fought Bronco McCart. What can you remember about that fight?
You know what? That's actually a good one there. Bronco, he was a guy I kind of looked up to. I watched Bronco McCart on Tuesday Night Fights all the time, and I was a big fan of Bronco McCart. So when they told me I was fighting him, I was kind of like bummed out about that, to be honest with you. But he was a great fighter. It was fun to get in there with him, and I just didn't want to fight him though. And then, but he was a super cool guy, nice, yeah, still very slick. He was a very experienced guy at that point. And going into that fight, I do what my talent, my size, my strength, and all that I was in for good. That I would win the fight. And during that fight, I just kind of I pretty much went in there to learn as much as I could off of a experienced guy like Bronco McCart.
Awesome. And then in May 2007, you fought Addison Miranda, and that was for an eliminator. What can you remember about that fight? Because you won it quite impressively.
Yeah, you know what? That fight there with Edison Miranda was known to be this big time killer. He was the most feared fighter in boxing at that time, and people, seem to forget that. And he was the most avoided. And I was kind of frustrated going into that fight because right before him, I fought Zartucci, and that was supposed to be the #1 mandatory title shot. And next thing you know, they're telling me, well, guess what? You're not. You got to fight Edison Miranda. And that was crazy. But I did, and I went in there, and the game plan to fight Miranda was to push him straight back. Because if you let Miranda set up or if you try to move around and dance around, he could have caught you with something. So our game plan was to use our strength and our power, push him back, and we did, and it worked. I showed everybody that my power, my speed, and endurance is better than his.
Yeah, September 2007, you fought Jermaine Taylor. And Jermaine Taylor was coming off wins against Bernard Hopkins, who was the man. So, and you knocked him out in 7 rounds. It was considered an upset at the time, but you look sensational in doing it. What can you remember about that fight?
I remember to this day, I still get a little bit frustrated with that fight. And then not frustrated. I mean, the fight was a great fight, and it turned out to be one of the best middleweight fights of all time. But up there, or at least up there. But they had it closer. I gave Jermaine out of the 7 rounds. I gave him 2 rounds, and from what I remember, the first round I kind of took it to Jermaine Taylor. The beginning of the second round, I was finding it kind of easy, and I think I got a little overconfident in there in that second round. He caught me, and I went down. It was the equilibrium shot. I was there mentally. I just had a hard time getting my legs, and I knew if I could survive that round, that fight was mine. And I think what really set the tone for the rest of the fight was when I came back in that third round and I threw, I think it was like 99 punches, and I took it to him, and I think that sucked everything out of Jermaine Taylor right there. So, but they had it close going after the 7 rounds, and I mean it was close because of the knockdown. But as far as rounds, I thought I was up definitely at that time 4-2.
And you obviously straight after that he wanted a rematch. So there must have been a rematch clause because in February 2008, Jermaine Taylor wanted an immediate rematch, and you basically took him to school over 12 rounds. That sort of crushed you as this guy's the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. How did that make you feel? Where a lot of people thought in the first fight, oh, okay, it was a bit of an upset. And then Jermaine Taylor being confident, oh, I'm going to rematch him and get back what I lost. But then you took him to school again. Must have been a big buzz for you.
Yeah, and that goes on the entire point of what I was saying. I mean, people said that in a rematch that if I didn't knock him out, that I wasn't going to win the fight, that I couldn't win. When in fact, I was showing in that first fight that I was winning the rounds. You know what I mean? That I could beat Jermaine Taylor by decision. And that showed a lot in that second fight. He fought a lot better fight. He fought a lot smarter fight. And, obviously what you're going to when you're a professional world champion, you have the experience, you're going to change things. And they did. They changed their game. And it was a tough fight. It was a good fight. But I showed that I could outbox him and that I could outlast him. And that's what we did in that second fight.
Kelly, after that, you fought Bernard Hopkins, but it wasn't for a world title. Your titles weren't up for that fight. What can you remember about fighting the executioner, the great Bernard Hopkins?
Oh, man, great, an all-time great.
You went in as a favourite because everyone thought Jermaine Taylor beat Bernard Hopkins and you beat Jermaine Taylor. Boxing doesn't work that way, but everyone thought you were going to go in and beat Bernard Hopkins. What happened in that fight? But the belts weren't up, so that at least you didn't lose your titles.
Yeah, well, I jumped up 2 weight classes, which that wasn't the problem either. I'll be honest with you on that. It wasn't my night. I wasn't even at 80% that night, and it's not making an excuse. This is all well documented stuff. I mean, the New Jersey or the Atlantic City Commission, they know it's in the files. Robert Garcia, who had Stephen Luevno on the undercard, he knows because we put our medication in Stephen Luevno's name, so the Hopkins camp didn't find out. With that being said, Bernard fought a great fight. He is an all-time great, but it just wasn't my night. We could use – I don't use fights as measuring sticks now, but you have to at some point take into consideration that fight still shouldn't have happened that way. I did beat Jermaine twice. Jermaine did beat Bernard Hopkins twice. Controversial or not, they were obviously close fights. If you thought Bernard won or Jermaine, they were close fights. And then I go in and I get beat by Hopkins like I did. Now, if I went in and won 3 or 4 rounds and some of the other rounds were competitive, but he won and he beat me by unanimous decision, 116, 112, then okay, yeah, that makes sense because styles make fights. But for me to go in and do the Jermaine Taylor and then go look like I did against Bernard Hopkins, that goes to show you that wasn't Kelly Pavlik that night. And if anybody had that much of sports knowledge, just not boxing, but sports, then they would know that something was not right that night and I didn't look like me.
No,
and it wasn't so much.
I agree 100%.
But like I said, but like I said, if I went in and I got beat 6 rounds to 4, or 6 or 8 rounds to 8 rounds to 4 or something like that, that's totally different. Like, okay, I won some rounds and I was in there, but Bernard just outgunned me and he was, because styles make fights. You don't get beat like I did without something being wrong. And again, it was documented, but at the same time, I hate taking the credit away. I'm not trying to, and I'm probably not taking it away because people ain't going to think I'm lying. But, Bernard is great. And it sucked for me to have to fight somebody like Bernard Hopkins when I had that going on because Bernard is just, that good.
And then in 2009, you successfully made defenses against Marco Antonio Rubio and Espinino. So that you had a good year. But April 2010, you fought Sergio Martinez. What can you remember about that fight?
Let's go back real quick on the Rubio. Now, I know I'm playing. I may be bitching here a little bit, or not. I'm not playing victim. I'm just calling a bluebird blue. Rubio, I go in there, I dominate him after the Hopkins fight, where everybody said Hopkins ruined me. It wasn't even a close fight. Right after that, Rubio goes on a 8 or 9 fight winning streak. Knocks out David Lemieux, who 4 years after that fights Triple G, and Lemieux is built up as this great fighter. And when Triple G knocks him out, Triple G goes up on his pedestal. But everybody forgets that Marco Antonio Rubio knocks out David Lemieux at a time that he was 25-0 with 25 knockouts, and Rubio don't land but 10 punches the entire fight against me when I stop him in the 9th round.
Yeah.
Don't get no credit for that. It is what it is.
You did. From us fans, you did. No, you did. What was it like fighting Sergio Martinez? Because as fans, we thought you would beat him. I was confident you would beat him.
Another fight that, unfortunately for me, Man, I know I sound like I'm being a little crybaby, but I'm not. It's just another fight that wasn't my night on that one either. I mean, and there was a fight where you heard, if you go back watch the fight, you hear the commentators talk about my weight issues, and you hear them talk about a treadmill and a stationary bike in my hotel room. That fight just came down to, again, against a great fighter. It just came down to hit the wall in the ninth round. People say it was because of the cut. If I would have had that cut or not, he still would have done what he did. He would have beat me those last couple rounds. The middle rounds, I gained control. I figured him out. I was beating him. As a matter of fact, I was up on the scorecards going into the ninth round. The commentators had me up. Everything was going my way. And then just come that ninth round, I hit the wall. Nothing I could do. I wasn't tired cardio, like lung-wise. I was tired. I was just muscle weary and very lethargic. And again, a guy like Sergio Martinez, with the talent and skills that he got, took full advantage of it. I mean, he's a hell of a boxer. But you could see in those middle rounds where that fight was going my way. And fairly easy. I hurt him. He was hurt by that, but it is what it is on that. And at the end of the day, I never really talked about it. I can talk about it now because I'm retired and I'm never going back to the sport, so it don't matter. But those are the truth, the truth to the story. I mean, that was a competitive fight for a while. And, Sergio just picked it up at the end, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah, we're talking to Kelly Pavlik, one of the superstars of the sport, not really 10, 12 years ago. Kelly, why was your fan base so massive with the UFC fans? You're the number one boxer that the UFC fans loved. Was it your attacking style? Was it the look you had? Because I remember these big hype around the UFC fans. They used to love watching you fight.
I don't know. That's a hell of a question. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because I was signed with Affliction, who was kind of, mixed in with UFC or not. But that's a good question. I don't know.
Because the fan base was massive. You were like the pin-up boy. Even though UFC and boxing's got different, sometimes pretty similar fan base. You were like the guy that they all loved out of the UFC. The UFC crowd would always come and watch you fight and support you.
I mean, I was pretty big with music too, the entertainment. Rap groups and metal groups and it was weird. And I was kind of liked by everybody but the boxing fans. So
look, you fought, till you were 30 years of age, which is young for a middleweight boxer, and you won 4 fights in a row after Martinez. Why did you stop at 30? As fans, we felt you had a lot more in the tank, or were you just sick of the gruel of it all, or what was it?
The whole thing with that, and that's one that I actually get confused or frustrated with. I was pro over 12 years, and I had 42 pro fights. That's a lot. That's a lot. Floyd Mayweather has 8 more fights than I had, and he turned pro 5 years before me and retired 5 years after me. You know what I mean? So, no, I was around. I think people thought my career began when I won the world title in 2007, but they forget that I turned pro in 2000. And I had a lot of fights. I don't know what more they want. In boxing, if I would have stuck around till now or till I was 35 and then I'm punchy and I'm no good and the fans don't want nothing to do with you. Or if you retire too early, you have demons and you waste a career and this, that. Again, it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, my brain around that, the fact that I had 42 pro fights in over a 12-year period. Boxing is not a longevity sport. When I won the world title, a lot of guys are like me. You got some guys that'll fight till they're 50, 45, 40, and you got some guys that'll retire at 30 years old. For me, I wanted to be done. When I won the world title, I was counting down to retirement. The next big fights were financial security and everything else. And a big part of that, too, at the end was when I left Jack and I went to Robert Garcia. It was great. It was nice to go there with Robert. I loved it. I loved his stable. I loved Robert Garcia. It was cool. But I was leaving town now. I was leaving home, going across the country. I was fighting guys that, there was no big fights out there. And then the icing on the cake was the Andre Ward fight. that was a negotiation that was like that close to being signed. And Andre Ward ended up getting hurt. He hurt his shoulder, and he was out for like a year and a half, and there was no other big fights out there. At that point, I wanted to be done. I just did not want to box anymore.
And what a terrific career you had. What do you do now after boxing, Kelly? What are some of the interests and hobbies, and what's life for you after boxing?
You got a second? Will you let me tell you?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. I own a fitness gym in right outside of Youngstown right now that's taken off big. I created a charitable organization, and I'm in the process of opening a boxing gym. And on top of that, I'm also in the process of opening another fitness gym. I have created an app. I teamed up with my buddy from Youngstown, who was a pro fighter, Billy Lau. He actually beat John Duddy. And me and him have a boxing app. It's called the Sweet Science Plus. And it's a fantastic app. We have tutorials on how to punch and train. We give combos, and then we have a strength and conditioning part of it. And then the biggest part of this app is we have a nutritional plan and diet plan and a grocery list that we give you.
Wow.
So it's fantastic. We put a lot into that. I also have a podcast that I'm doing. It's called The Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez. We cover fights. We go to the big fights. And then I right now also have me and a partner, Jess Leone. We are doing sports testing across the country. Right now we have the AAU West Coast, and we're also very close to signing and finishing up and getting all the youth football programs. And it's but we do testing for all sports. So
wow.
Yeah.
Awesome work, Kelly. You're very impressive after boxing. That is awesome. Before we sign off the interview, and by the way, thank you for your time. You're a gentleman. Is there a funny story you'd like to share with us in boxing? Because boxing has so many characters. What's the funniest story you've endowed in boxing where you look back in 10 years' time over a beer and you can have a laugh about?
Oh man, there's so many. I would have to say one. There's a lot of them. One day, if I'll text you and let you know if there's more. But there was one where I fought a kid that was actually kind of funny. After the fight, I knocked him out. Like I knocked him out so bad that he actually went out of the ring. And his name was Daniel Neal. And after we're talking with him, and I think it was like a couple hours later, he comes down. We're all eating. And he goes, yeah, he's like, you just kind of like rabbit punched me, though. I think they should have let the fight, go on. I thought I was okay. And we're all looking at each other and we're kind of like, dude, you got knocked out of the ring. Like, we couldn't even find you. You're out. and yeah, that was pretty funny. That, to this day, that gets us, Yeah, he thought he could continue, but he didn't even know that he got knocked out of the ring. So,
thank you for your time and your story. Who are the nice guys in the boxing game that you dealt with during your time, the promoters or people that you could say?
Oh, there's a lot. Boxing gets a bad rap, and there's a lot of bad in boxing. It's a brutal sport, physically and business wise. It's tough, but there was a lot. Top Rank was a fantastic promotional company, and I was glad that I went with them and boxed for them. And some of your fighters, there's a list. I was close with Toro Gotti. Diego Corrales was a great guy. Robert Garcia, and most of the fighters in his stable were all great. Winky Wright is a super nice guy. Antonio Tarver. Bernard Hopkins is a nice guy, a great guy. De La Hoya. So all them guys, when I got to meet them and hang out, they're super, super good people. There ain't many that I met that I could really say, man, he's an a-hole.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm sure there is. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's a good amount of them, but not that I really met or that I took the time to meet.
Now, you mentioned, well, you've got your podcast, so good luck with all that. Will you be going to the Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. fight?
I don't know. See, right now with these credentials and how they're giving them out, it's kind of hard. I was fortunate being world champ. We got credentialed for a lot of fights, but, they're really selective now as far as the media and how much media is allowed. And, you still got your USA Today's and ESPN's. I don't know how that works. We haven't put in yet since the coronavirus has been hitting the world. And, I would like to go to it. If not, I may watch it from home. I
Who are
said
you
I wasn't
tipping,
too.
Kelly? Who are you tipping?
I gotta lean towards Roy. Tyson still is Tyson. Tyson got the power, but Tyson has been inactive longer. Tyson's 2 years older. Roy's been a little more active, and but the problem with Roy is that he's still 51 years old, and even though he feels great, 51 is 51. Father Time shows up when he wants, and are them legs going to be fast enough to get out of the way of Mike Tyson?
Yeah.
These are all the questions. I don't know if the fight's a real fight, if they're still doing it more for charity, if they're going in to hurt each other, or if they're going in to give the fans a little bit of a show. I don't know, but we'll see. I guess I'm interested. At first I said I don't want to see two mid-aged guys get in the ring, and then I started laughing. I was like, who am I kidding? I'm going to get that fight and watch it. So
Yeah. Well, we're in Australia. One day we'd love to invite you down under here in Australia as well. Do you know anything about Australia? Do you know anything
No,
about
I have a buddy. Actually, I just had a guy. I met him at the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. He just called me. He's over there. I'm sending boxing gloves and a shirt over to him in Australia. And I have one other buddy that lives out by Sydney, Australia, who is originally from Youngstown. His name's Johnny Stofko. But other than that, I would like to get there. It's just a damn long flight.
Well, you better give me a call because we'll take you out and we'll do the Aussie things.
Heck yeah, that sounds good. I want to eat the food.
Yeah, no problem. We'll take you to a nice steakhouse.
Hell yeah, sounds good.
All right, Kelly. Thank you for your time. Kelly Pavlik is undisputed middleweight champion of the world and a gentleman. You take care, my friend.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Great interview.
Thank you.